Hello and welcome to the August 2024 meeting of the Triangle Association of Freelancers. Our guest this evening is Ed Southern, the Executive Director of the North Carolina Writers Network. Ed, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Don. It's an honor to be here.
I'm excited to talk with you about the NCWN, but I wanted to talk a little bit about your personal story first, your writing. I was hoping we could start by telling us a little bit about your creative journey as a writer and, kind of how you came to where you are today professionally.
Goodness. I was kind of hoping you'd forget that part because I feel like me talking to the Triangle area freelancers about freelancing is a case study in how not to do things. I don't feel like I've ever quite mastered the art of certainly of pitching successfully. Um, how I got here. Involved a great deal of trial and error and luck. Um, I went to college with just a vague idea that I wanted to write. Not really sure what that entailed. No idea how you would make a living at it. I didn't come from any kind of a creative background, and thought I would go into journalism. Um, Realized during college I had some journalism jobs, realized that wasn't for me. Um, Went to graduate school for lack of anything better to do, dropped out of graduate school because I didn't like it, and had that youthful certainty that I was going to write the next great American novel. But I figured I still have to put food on the plate while I do that, and knowing how much I love books, I thought, well, get a job in a bookstore. And ended up making a career of the book industry. Found out that there is an entire industry behind, every book on every shelf in every bookstore and library that you see, and that you don't have to move to New York City to be a part of it. That you could stay in North Carolina, in fact, and be a part of the book business. And so my job in the bookstore, I did that for only about 4.5 years. Um, and then got a job with a wonderful sort of mid-sized publishing company, John F. Blair Publisher, which at that time was in Winston-Salem. They have since been bought out and are known only as Blair and are based in the Triangle. Still doing wonderful work, but I worked there for about 8.5 years. Um, really proud of the work that we did there. And then the opportunity came up with the North Carolina Writers Network, and I took it. I applied for the job of executive director and was accepted, and have been doing that ever since. Um, Along the way, I've continued writing. At some point, I trained myself to get up early in the morning when, the only time when I had a house to myself, and some quiet in which to write. And so that's still my writing habit, my writing practice. Um, and have had, uh, I don't know, I've been very fortunate to be able to get to write some things I've really enjoyed writing, both book length and short form, along with uh, getting to work with books, with writers, with the things that I love. So I consider myself very fortunate.
Is fiction now your preferred form? I see your book, Fight Songs, A Story of Love and Sports in a Complicated South, which I'm assuming is a nonfiction book on college sports. But then you've also, published a lot of short stories. I see.
Mhm.
I'm assuming those are short stories for those particular publications, North Carolina Literary Review and the others.
They've been
So
both.
you've kind of got tried your hand at both. Is fiction your preferred now?
I don't know. I, um, I would like to write and publish a novel simply because I haven't. So I guess in that regard, fiction is my preferred genre at the moment. But I really don't. I don't. I'm trying to think how to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound pretentious. Um, I don't feel confined by any one particular genre. I feel like writing is writing. And so I enjoy writing nonfiction. I enjoy writing fiction. Um, I even sometimes write really bad poetry, but I enjoy writing that. Or maybe I should say, to use the old Ernest Hemingway formulation, that I enjoy having written in all those genres. I don't know how much I enjoy the actual writing process itself when it's 5 in the morning and I'm about to pull out my hair. So
Yep. Were you an avid reader as a kid, Ed? I mean, have you had a love of words your entire life?
yes, yeah, I've always loved to read and to read really eclectically and widely. I I don't really have a preferred genre as far as reading goes. I mean, most of what I read is either fiction or sort of the popular nonfiction. I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't, I'll every now and then I'll have to read an academic title for some research that I'm doing for something that I'm writing. But otherwise, I like, the new release section of the bookstore, and like seeing what's there. I will say I'm right now I'm listening to an audiobook, a biography of Walt Disney. It just piqued my curiosity, and it's utterly fascinating. I'm deeper into that than I ever thought I would be into anything Disney related, but he was a fascinating guy.
I love stumbling on a book, just something you know nothing about, but it's like, this looks kind of interesting. And then when you read it, you just fall into it like a swimming pool. And
Yeah,
it's,
and that's
yeah,
one of my. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
no,
mean
no,
to
go
interrupt you.
ahead.
It's one of the things I love most about bookstores and about book people, um, as opposed to algorithms. It is, an algorithm is only going to suggest to you is only going to make suggestions based on what you've already bought. Um, a book person is going to make suggestions based on instinct. And then, also you have the tremendous pleasure of just browsing a bookstore with no particular goal in mind. Um, it's I don't know. Well, obviously I'm biased, but that's one of my favorite things. But
You're
yeah, I do
preaching to the
love just.
choir though, Ed. I think
I'm
everybody in
sure
this
I
room
am, but
right now
I
is like, oh
appreciate the
yeah,
chance to
I
ask
know
you
that
whether for
feeling and
choir
I
or
know
not.
that
So
experience. Let's talk a little bit about the North Carolina Writers Network. What are your responsibilities as the executive director?
my responsibility is whatever it needs to be on any given day or in any given hour. And I think most executive directors, most um, people in charge of something will say the same thing. Um, Overall, my job is to sort of set the direction for the network, where we want to go, and then figure out how we're going to get there. That's very abstract, I know, but um, we just our staff and board this past winter just went through sort of a refresher course. We had done some strategic planning back in 2019, and I remember meeting with the staff in late February of 2020 to figure out, all right, how are we going to implement this? And 2 weeks later, all of it gets tossed out the window, and we're just in survival mode. Um, so this past winter, we finally felt we were at a place to do a refresher on the strategy and figuring out the why of what we do, and making sure that we're really clear on that. You know, what is it that we do in essence? We connect writers, we promote writers, we educate writers, we serve writers. To what purpose? What are we hoping to accomplish with that? Um, and having done that, we're now in a process of figuring out, it's like, okay, what's the best way for us to do that? What's the best way for us to accomplish these goals of connecting, promoting, educating, and serving writers all across the state and beyond? Um, so it's an exciting time well, right now I can say it's an exciting time for the network. Sometimes when you're in the midst of a day, it's a nerve-wracking time. It's a very thin line between those two states of being.
When was the organization established? Can you tell us a little bit about its formation and its history?
It was formally established in 1985. The the seeds of the network, sorry, that's a little bit of a cheesy metaphor, but were planted a couple of years before that with a bunch of writers literally just sitting around coffee shops, sitting around Marshall Warren's kitchen table, and saying how North Carolina had a has the North Carolina Poetry Society since I think the 1920s, either the 1920s or the 1930s. There have been local writing clubs for, in some cases, nearly as long. Um, there was a long-standing organization going back to the 1940s that was a group for writers by invitation only, and you had to have published a book in order to be invited into this group. The folks who founded the network, all of them were part of one or more of these existing groups, and they wanted to bring everyone together. They wanted to establish a group that was open to anyone with an interest in creative writing, working in whatever genres, uh, whatever their publication history may be, whatever their publishing goals might be. In other words, if you want to be the next Lee Smith or Joe McCorkle, great. We have a place for you in the network. We hope we can offer you something of value. If you are Lee Smith or Joe McCorkle, great. We have a place for you in the network, and we hope we can offer you something of value. Not a lot at that point, but something. If you hope to never get published at all, if that's not why you write, if just write for the pleasure of it, great. We have a place for you in the network, and we hope we can offer you something of value. I got off track a little bit. I began by talking about the history. It was formally incorporated as a 501c3 in 1985. And from there, again, we've been fortunate. We've continued to grow. I'm I think, fifth executive director in the history of the organization, and I've been able to build on a very strong foundation that's been left to me by my predecessors.
How many members does the network have currently?
Right around 1,400.
And that's statewide, of course. Now, I recall that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but you have, I don't want to say chapters in every county, but you have an official or a presence in every county. Is that correct? Is that
We
right?
try to. Yes, the membership is statewide and beyond the state. About 10 to 15% of our members live outside North Carolina. Um, we have who volunteers that we call regional reps, regional representatives, who put together low cost, or excuse me, no cost, small scale monthly events in their communities around the state, so that writers can come together, do an open mic, do a critique group, do one of them does a book club, um, and keep the literary community vibrant and active throughout the year. In fact, we have at least one of them, with tonight Cindy Brookshire is our regional rep for Johnston and adjacent counties. So Cindy, it's good to see you tonight.
Ed, tell us a little bit about some of the events that the network hosts every year. You've got a spring and a fall conference, and there are other events also. Take us through what we will get in a year for our membership.
Oh goodness. Um, excuse me. Well, in the winter, we offer a series of online classes, which we'll be doing again this winter. These tend to be just short classes, 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half, on some aspect of the craft or business of writing. For those, we usually bring in an instructor from outside North Carolina. This is our chance to, we don't have a huge travel budget. So this is our chance to go far afield, to hear from writers, who might not be able to make it to one of our in-person events. And then we have our spring conference in April, held at UNC Greensboro. This is a one-day conference, very dynamic, diplomatic way of putting it, for participants. We do 2 sessions of classes plus a keynote. Joe McCorkle, in fact, was the keynoter this past year. Readings, events like Slush Pile Live, where you can submit 1 page of a manuscript. We have a panel of editors who will listen to that being read anonymously and will tell you what they liked and didn't like. In July, we have our Squire Summer Writing Workshops that move around the state. Last year we held them or this past July, we held them at East Carolina. These are more intensive. It's a multi-day workshop where you stay in the same workshop throughout the weekend and really dive deep into the genre that you're studying and the work that you yourself are doing. And then our big one, every November, we have our fall conference, and we just today opened registration for that. And I will put the link
Is that
to the
in
conference
Greensboro?
webpage. I'm
Is that
sorry?
in Greensboro?
No, the fall conference this year is going to be in Asheville.
Oh, okay.
The fall conference moves around the state. We try to make it as accessible as we can to as many North Carolina writers as we can. So, if you're able to come to the conference, but you can't swing a hotel for the weekend, we hope to bring the conference near you at some point. We're going to be in Asheville November 1st through 3rd this year. We've got a great lineup. Ron Rash is going to be our keynoter. We've got 3 master classes in fiction, creative nonfiction, and poetry, plus 5 sessions of classes in all sorts of aspects of writing, business and craft. So please check it out. Hope you can join us.
That's awesome. And we're always, well, first of all, we appreciate the support you've shown to our events, Ed, and we're always happy to spread the word about your activities as well, especially the 2 conferences that you have every year. How much is membership in the network? And is there like a tiered membership?
It is. The basic individual membership is $80 for a year. We do offer reduced rates for seniors over the age of 65, writers under the age of 30, full-time students, and writers with disabilities. For them, it's $60 a year. But then we also offer 2-year memberships at a discount. So a 2-year individual membership is $140 compared to the $80 a year. For those at the reduced rate, it's $110 for 2 years, as opposed to 60 a year. We've been looking at, maybe in the future, playing with some more tiers. Not sure what will come of that, but that's what we have right now. Again, accessibility is a big focus of ours. We want the network to be as open as we can get it.
That's a wonderful mission. Ed, is there anything else before we go to questions? Is there anything else about the network that you would like our members to know as far as the services you provide or any aspect of its history or anything that we can do, as writers and as an organization that would benefit the network as well?
I was just we're trying to get the next issue of our biannual journal, Highway 64, trying desperately to get that ready to go to the printer. And I was reading today our letter from the board, which is a regular feature. And this one was written by one of our newer board members, a wonderful writer named Julia Ridley Smith, based in Greensboro. And she had a line in there that really struck me, and I won't be able to quote it exactly, but she talked about how communities are there to support us, but only if we support them. Only if we give of them, we have to give our communities our time, our attention, our energy. If if they are going to remain vibrant and supportive. The community, the writing community in the state is wonderful, but it's not made up by the it's not made up by me or the network or the institution of the writers network. It's made up of we're just facilitators. It's made up of each of you, each writer in this state or outside this state if you want to be a part of our community. um, Coming to us with your time, with your attention, with your presence, with your energy. That's what, in a metaphysical sense, the network is, and that's what the network is for. Um, I get paid just to help it all happen, but it really doesn't happen without y'all.
Yeah, we share a similar mission in that respect. I've always felt that you get out of an organization what you put into it, and so we always encourage our members to start conversations on topics related to writing and publishing, and never hesitate to ask a question. We have a very vibrant listserv, sometimes too vibrant, but it's a great way for our members to engage with each other and get to know each other, you know what I mean, and help each other as writers. And that's something that I'm very proud of. Ed, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. I'd like to see if anybody here has any questions for you. Anyone have any questions about Ed as a writer or about the network itself? Anything at all? Let's see. How would you characterize the strength character of the writing environment in North Carolina today? Nancy asked that. That's a good question, Ed. What are your thoughts?
And for example, AI, I like that. Um, at the risk of seeming like an advertisement, I will say that our Saturday morning breakfast panel at the upcoming fall conference is going to be about writers and AI, and we're going to have people who have really studied AI, talking about the benefits, the opportunities, the dangers, the hype surrounding it, the backlash. It's a conversation that I'm looking forward to, even though I am a troglodyte when it comes to technology. I don't know about it. I don't want to know about it. Um, and in fact, I named this panel, "Have you people never seen the Terminator?" Um, but so if you're concerned particularly about AI, I do encourage you to come to the fall conference where we will have this discussion on it. The strength character of the writing environment in North Carolina today, it's in some ways it's stronger than it's ever been. It's more active than it's ever been. There are so many writers in North Carolina. Um, I think even more now than I think it was in the 1990s when the late great Doris Betts said that you can't spit in North Carolina without hitting a writer. Um, and I think that may be even more true now. Um, I do think, I think some people look at it and say, well, I miss the days, the Algonquin days of, Joel and Lee and Clyde, and it seemed like such a close knit community. And I think our culture has changed, the book business has changed in ways where you're not going to have that sort of a fraternity at the top, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Lee and Jill and Clyde are still very active and still putting out great work, but we've got a host of other writers now. I'll try to stick just to the triangle: Misha Marin, Randall Owain, Ross White at Carolina. I'm trying to think. Bell Boggs at State. I know I'm going to forget lots of people that I shouldn't. Crystal Simone Smith, a terrific poet in Durham. Um, and like I said, I'm trying to confine Heather Bell Adams in Raleigh. I'm trying to confine myself just to the Triangle. I mean, these are all wonderful writers publishing great work. So um, and then up and comers that we haven't heard of yet, but we're going to soon. So
And a
yeah,
lot more diversity among our writers
yes,
as well, too, which is definitely a good thing. I was curious,
absolutely.
do you have a strong, uh, what percentage of your members would you say are poets? Do you have like a strong poetry subgroup within the network?
We do. And see, that's the thing. I don't know that I could put I could tell you that probably 30 to 40% of our members are at least interested in poetry. Um, whether, and it depends on how you define a poet. Um, if we're going simply by publication, yeah, it's probably a much smaller percentage. But a lot of our members are interested. They may write mostly fiction, they might write mostly nonfiction, but they do also like to write poetry. And that's something that we try to encourage is that, write wherever the spirit moves you.
That'd be a great t-shirt. I like that, right?
Right where the spirit moves you.
That's wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions for Ed or comments or anything?
I do have a question. Do you have a strategy on attracting, I guess, Gen Z people who are writers who are in their 20s and 30s and probably spend more online creating content than any of us ever did?
We have a strategy to attract more younger writers. One of the things that I recognize is that I am not the person to say how we're going to go about doing that. And so one of the things that we've been wanting to do for a while, and I hope that we will, in fact, be able to do soon, are roundtables and forums with younger writers where we ask them, um, what could the network provide that would make you fork over 60 to $80 a year to be a member? Um, the last thing I want to do is as a Gen Xer, because I can remember being in my early 20s and having older people say, well, this is what you young people want or need. That's not the approach I want to take. I want to ask them, what do you feel you want or need? And I have heard, I've talked to enough younger writers who are very interested uh, in the Writers Network and love that there is something like the Writers Network in North Carolina because they want to be a part. Community is very important to them. They want to be a part of a community. They want to make connections. And they're glad to know that there's an organization that can help them do that. As with a lot of young people, though, it's just a question of it's always a struggle finding the time and the money to be a part of it. So that's one of our biggest challenges, figuring out how we're going to capitalize on that interest in community that writers have and get them involved. But I want them to tell me, how they want us to do that. I don't want to tell them.
Anyone else?
Stacy Glenn has a question. She
I
says,
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm the one with the dog. I'm the dog, and I can't figure
Yeah.
out how to get the face off. So that's why I put my question in the chat because I didn't want to seem like a talking dog.
yeah, but it came directly to me. Is Stacy, is it okay if I read it, or do you want to read it?
I'll go ahead and read it. But
Okay.
yes, I'm the dog. I don't know why it went. I'm sorry. I didn't really know what I was doing here. But my
That's
name is
okay.
Stacy, and I did have a question. I work in the medical profession, and I just, I've noticed more. I'm obviously online, part of a lot of medical organizations. I've noticed a lot more medical providers just writing and publishing, especially on things like burnout, healthcare disparities. Do you have a strong medical presence in the network, or do you think that's something you would want to have if you don't already have that?
How do you mean medical presence? Do you mean people who work in the healthcare industry
Yes.
who are members?
Yes, and who are, but they also write or maybe have published a book or things like that.
A fair number. We don't ask members about their day jobs.
Okay.
And so
Fair.
again, part of our, welcoming, but I do know just from knowing, several of our members, I do know quite a few who are either in the medical field or were in the medical field and are retired now or just moved on to something else. One of supposed to have favorites, but one of my favorite members is a writer named Paul Austin, who is in Durham, whose first book was a memoir about his experience. He was an ER doctor for a number of years. And I love hearing the stories that he tells about his time doing that. He's a fascinating guy.
Yeah, I've read those are some of my favorite books, I will say, are the ER book or the ED books. But
Yeah.
so, yeah, well, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to make a comment. I moved to North Carolina from Virginia 10 years ago, and when I was in Virginia, I was a member of the Virginia Writers Club. We had a local chapter. So just moving to a new place and wanting to get oriented, it helped to have that feeling of being part of a network. And one of the first things I discovered was something that Ed, you had talked about, was the literary map, the
Yeah.
library at UNCG. I was able to see who are the published writers that live in Johnston County. Who could I read? Like I'd never read Elizabeth Spencer. I'd never read her books before. I was like, I want to read some North Carolina writers. So just the resources. And then on a local level, we get lots of people coming into our meetings with just the same basic questions over and over again. And I always say, just join the network. We're not reinventing the wheel on a local basis. You can go to these awesome conferences. So even the guy that started the writers group in Johnston County, he had always wanted to write a book. He was a lifetime educator. He went to, I think it was one of the conferences you had in Wilmington, and it just turbo drived him. He was able to finish his book finally after years. So you're a great resource.
Thank you, Cindy, and I return those compliments. You have done wonderful work for the writers in your area, and done a great job. Even before you became the regional rep, you were doing fantastic work, and very appreciative.
Cindy, it's great to have you with us as well. It really is. We appreciate it.